February 24th, 2005. Rosie Essa, 38, is driving in Cleveland, heading to the movies. She has a minor, low-speed accident, the kind of thing that happens all the time. Except this time, what happened next wasn't ordinary at all. It was the start of something that would change everything for Rosie forever. When the emergency services arrived, they discovered her traumatized but vomiting profusely, which puzzled them beyond their senses because this wasn't normal. She was soon rushed to the hospital where doctors proclaimed her dead. But what happened next would reveal the most unusual and disturbing story that could possibly happen to a 38-year-old lovely housewife. On the morning of February 24th, 2005, Rosie, her husband Yazid Essa, and their two small children awoke to begin their day. Yazid had the day off, which provided him the opportunity to play with and care for the children, enabling Rosie to concentrate on her goals without any concerns. Rosie had planned to go to the cinema with her sister to watch a movie and spend some quality time together. But as the morning progressed, her errands and duties piled up, making her run late. Rosie immediately got ready, raced out the front door, and jumped into her car, driving to the movie at 1:53 p.m. While driving, Rosie called a buddy for a casual chat. What began as a normal conversation took a dark and unexpected turn. In the middle of their conversation, signaling the start of a terrible and unexplained chain of events that would change everything, she calls her friend Ava and says, "I feel like crap. I just feel horrible." And so, she's talking about that with her friend Ava. So, she then passes out. Rosie was driving much more slowly than usual in her Volvo SUV as she headed down Wilson Mills Road toward the movie theater. Usually, it was only a 10-minute drive from her house to the theater, but as she got closer, something seemed off. Her driving became erratic, and she started veering all over the road. Suddenly, her car crashed into another car, but she kept veering until her car slowly slowed down and finally stopped. This was completely out of character for Rosie. As a medical professional drove by, she saw Rosie's car parked awkwardly on the road. She quickly pulled over and ran to check on the driver. When she got to the car, she saw Rosie slumped in the driver's seat, vomiting uncontrollably all over herself and the doors. Rosie's eyes were wide open, and she was struggling to breathe. Realizing how serious the situation was, the practitioner tried to help, but it was clear that Rosie needed immediate medical attention. Concerned bystanders gathered, trying to figure out what was going on and how they could help. The practitioner called 911 to report the accident. And after a while, the police and paramedics arrived and rushed Rosie to Hillcrest Hospital. While the paramedics were taking care of Rosie, the police stayed at the scene of the accident, trying to figure out what had happened. They looked at the car at the scene of the accident to find clues because it didn't look like a normal car accident scene, and Rosie was in very bad shape. Rosie's car was going at a normal speed, and it didn't make sense that the car looked fine when Rosie was in such bad shape when she got to the hospital. The doctor quickly saw that she wasn't breathing well and wasn't responding. He started treatment right away and put in an incubation tube to help her breathe. They also gave her multiple rounds of medicine to try to speed up her heart rate or at least keep its rhythm stable. But Rosie's heart rate stayed irregular, which shocked the doctor because there were no signs of trauma or injuries on her body that could explain her critical condition.
We have a female who is healthy who, when EMS gets to the scene, she's vomited. She's unresponsive. Things, as an emergency physician, I would be thinking about is, did she have an aneurysm that ruptured in her brain and she has a large hemorrhage? Did she have a dissection of her aorta that damaged her vessels?
Meanwhile, Yazid was called as soon as Rosie was taken to the emergency room. He was at home with the kids when he got the call from the hospital, so he quickly drove over to Rosie's house and asked them to watch the kids while he rushed to Rosie's side at the hospital. The doctors asked Yazid if Rosie had any medical history that could explain why she wasn't responding, but Yazid told them that Rosie was completely healthy. Tragically, after 40 to 45 minutes of intensive treatment, Rosie still wasn't responding. And an hour after arriving at the hospital, her condition didn't get better, and she was pronounced dead. But this small car accident was about to bring some hidden secrets to light. Dominic Rosie, Rosie's brother and a lawyer by trade, made a number of difficult calls to tell everyone, including Rosie's best friend, Eva McGregor. When Rosie was only 4, she met Eva, who was 15 at the time and working as a babysitter at Rosie's house. When Eva got the call and learned about Rosie's sudden death, she was shocked and upset, but she was able to calm down and share a strange suspicion with Dominic. "I have a weird thing that happened. Rosie was talking to me just before she died, and she was mentioning that Yaz gave her this pill, but she said it just made her feel terrible. So you need to look into that." She recounted her last conversation with Rosie, which had taken place just seconds before the accident. Eva's recollection of their chat hinted at something unusual, deepening the mystery of Rosie's untimely death. On the morning of February 24th, 2005, just before leaving the house, Yazid had insisted that Rosie take some calcium pills, as he emphasized the importance of bone health for her as she was approaching the age of 38. However, shortly after taking the pills, Rosie began to feel. Eva persuaded Dominic to research this option since it would help him comprehend the circumstances surrounding Rosie's unexpected and inexplicable death. So, Dr. Balraj did a complete autopsy and toxicology analysis on Rosie on February 25th, 2005. Everyone hoped for answers, but to their dismay, the results were inconclusive. Despite thorough examination, no clues emerged to explain the cause of Rosie's death. A perfectly healthy 38-year-old mother of 2 died so suddenly in a minor car collision that it was hard for anyone to accept. Investigators felt they were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, but out of respect, they decided to give Yazid and his family some time to grieve. With no evidence of foul play, there was no. Rosie was not just a full-of-life person, but also very passionate and hardworking. Shortly after graduating, she began her career and secured a steady position at Mount Sinai Hospital. It was around this time that she met the young physician named Yazid Essa. Yazid Issa was the son of Palestinian immigrant parents who grew up in Detroit. His family owned a grocery store. It was there, in 1995, that Rosen and Yazid fell in love and married on September 11th, 1999. Their family quickly grew with the birth of their son, Armand, in February, and their daughter, Lena, in February 2002. The loving couple even planned on having a 3rd child to add to their happy family. The family thought, well, this is great because, what a handsome guy. We all seem to. He's just so nice and warm and fuzzy. And so they embraced him, and they moved into a, lovely neighborhood. And you have a doctor and a beautiful wife, and then they have 2 little kids not long after. So, perfect couple, perfect family, perfect everything. As a result of the background check, the detectives did not find any suspicious information to look into. To find answers, they resumed their investigation. This investigation was going to bring new surprises and shocking twists to the case. They started by re-interviewing several witnesses and hospital staff in the hopes of finding something they might have missed the first time around. It was during these interviews that they noticed something odd about Yazid's reaction to the news of his wife's death. Instead of showing the expected grief, he acted strangely detached and didn't seem to care about that his behavior was strange. The investigators were interested in Yazid's strange behavior because they found out more disturbing information soon after the accident. Yazid sent a surprisingly calm text message to everyone saying, "I just wanted to let you know that Rosie died yesterday in a minor car accident. She will be missed." Given the situation, the casual tone of the message was shocking. What was even more strange was that Yazid didn't ask any questions about his wife's death. He just believed that the car accident was the cause without asking for more information. 2 weeks after Rosie's untimely death, the police chose to contact Yazid. They wanted to talk to them, not because they thought there was foul play, but to find out more about his version of what happened on the day of the accident. They called Yazid and politely asked if he could come down to the police station to give a voluntary statement. The detectives reassured him that it was a normal process that would only help them figure out what had happened. Their only goal was to learn more about what had happened and see if Yazid's story would lead them to any new information.
She wanted to go see a movie with her sister. She running a little late, and she went there on one and would cry. But then again, Burma, the next day I know I did a partner, you guys were about it, saying that she had been in a car accident. Now, say, be part of her.
She taking any over-the-counter meds or vitamin supplement? She was taking a vitamin occasionally, although the cold rubber breaking the count the problem, and then break when she wrapped it, she put the next paper. Just calcium. I can't see how that would relate to the thing. When did she start taking the vitamins?
Prenatal vitamin? Are they thinking, any of this had to do with any food?
We don't know. I mean, at this point, they have somebody who's 38 years old. I know. Suddenly she dies and nobody can help her. It's kind of like, what happened? Well, I think I have most of what I knew this point. Are there calcium pills at the home? Would you mind if I followed you back to your home and collected those? No, that'd be great. Better off. Okay.
Yazid didn't say anything when the inspectors went back to his house to get the vitamins and calcium supplements. When they got there, they were surprised to see a woman sitting in the kitchen. She said her name was Margarita Montanez. Yazid had hired a daily nanny to watch the kids while he was at work. What came as even more of a surprise was the news that Yazid had also hired a nighttime nanny, Michelle Madeline. Some people were confused by these details, but the detectives were focused on their main goal, which was to get the calcium tablets as possible evidence without making too much of a fuss. The detectives quickly gathered the supplements and sent them to be tested because they thought someone might have tampered with the pills, possibly to hurt Rosie.
I took in the evidence which was submitted to our laboratory, which was a plastic bottle filled with pills that were purported to be calcium pills. And my job at this point isn't to prove that there was poison. My job at this point is to prove that these capsules are all calcium. I found a bunch of calcium. However, I also found 9 of these pills had been tampered with.
At first look, the calcium pills that were taken from Yazid's house seemed normal, but things weren't what they seemed to be, as they were about to reveal the most shocking twists that no one saw coming. This finding made the detectives suspicious, so they sent the pills to a lab for a full analysis. To their surprise, the results showed something no one had expected. The 9 pills contained cyanide. Cyanide is a poison that can kill, but it is not usually checked for in regular toxicology checks. To find cyanide, a careful and specific study is needed. It's not something that would normally show up unless someone is specifically looking for it. Even the discovery of cyanide in Rosie's case was a very rare and horrifying event that most forensic scientists never see in their entire lives. With this shocking discovery, the investigation quickly turned into a full-on murder investigation. The detectives quickly got a search warrant for Rosie's car and carefully collected samples from her vomit and seat covers in the hopes of finding more clues. As expected, cyanide was found in Rosie's vomit during the search. To learn more about the case, the coroner ordered a new toxicology screening for Rosie. When the results came back, they shocked everyone. The analysis found a shocking 9.1 milligrams of cyanide per liter of her blood, which is 3 times higher than what is usually considered fatal. It was even scarier when they found out that the calcium pills she had been taking were tainted with 600 to 800 milligrams of pure cyanide. This dose was more than enough to kill her, so it was clear to the investigators that Rosie's death was not an accident, but a planned and malicious act. The police quickly came up with the idea that Yazid wanted Rosie to take the highway to the movies. If the cyanide had taken effect while she was driving at 60 miles per hour, a high-speed crash would have been inevitable, and the coroner would have given that as the cause of her death. However, Rosie's decision to take a back road that day and travel at a much slower speed helped them figure out the real cause of her death. With this idea in mind, the police were ready to arrest Yazid for killing Rosie. But Yazid was already one step ahead of them. Just as they were about to arrest him, they got the shocking news that he had disappeared.
Once Yazid had turned over the calcium tablets, and it would be highly likely once they were tested that the cyanide would be found. At that point in time, then the focus would come down on Dr. Issa. And what he chose to do is run.
The next day, March 18, 2005, investigators took the calcium pills from Yazid's house. Yazid asked Rosie's sister to watch the kids overnight, and she agreed without being suspicious. However, early the next morning, March 19th at 4 a.m., she got a voicemail from Yazid. In a calm voice, he said that his friend's brother had been in a terrible car accident in North Carolina and might not survive. He said that he was going to help him, but she didn't know that this was the start of Yazid's sudden disappearance. Yazid asked Rosie's family to watch his kids over the weekend and said he'd be back on Monday. But when Monday came and went without Yazid or even a call, Rosie's family got very worried and decided to call Yazid's friend to see if he knew what was going on. Maybe Yazid had to stay longer because of an emergency, but his friend's response shocked everyone. He said Yazid had never been to North Carolina, and there had been no car accident involving his brother. This news shocked Rosie's family, who wondered where Yazid could be and why he had lied. As they grew more worried and realized something was very wrong, they reported Yazid missing. Days went by without hearing from him, and the situation became more mysterious. Why would he just leave like this, especially since the murder of his wife was still being investigated? What could have been more important to him than this? Even though everyone was worried, Dominic, Rosie's brother, wasn't sure that Yazid was just lost. He had strong doubts and thought there might be more to it than that. Bad guy, set on discovering the truth. After rushing over to Yazid's house, Dominic started looking for clues. While he was looking through the kitchen, he saw a recently opened passport-style package on the counter. Dominic's heart sank when he realized that Yazid had not only gone missing, but also run away. He immediately told the police that he had found the passport envelope and asked them to question Yazid's brother and business partner, Firas Essa, who was the only family member he was close to. The police also moved quickly and called Firas to get more information. It didn't take him long to tell the police the whole truth. Yazid had actually asked his brother to help him leave the United States. He told Firas that he had to leave town because he was afraid that people would find out about his sexual affairs. Interestingly, the 2 women Yazid was seeing were the same women he hired as his children's daytime and nighttime nannies. Yazid had also told Firas that he was unhappy in his marriage and wanted to leave Rosie. This made investigators suspicious, but the real reason for the murder was much more disturbing. Could Yazid have killed his wife because he didn't want to pay the money for a divorce and instead wanted to be with the nannies? To get Yazid out of the country, Firas asked a cousin who had experienced smuggling people across borders to help them. This was a quick but dangerous way for Yazid to get away from his terrible situation. The police knew they had to bring Yazid back in order to get some clear answers. He goes up to Detroit, goes across the bridge to Windsor, from Windsor to Toronto, from Toronto to Cyprus, from Cyprus to Beirut. And why Beirut? Well, of course, he's Lebanese, but Beirut does not have an extradition treaty with the United States. So there he sat. Because he had a buddy over in Lebanon that had connections, had papers, had safe houses, and a place for him to just, if you're gonna be on the lam, the perfect place to be. On April 22nd, 2005, the county coroner said that Rosie Essa, who was 38 years old, had died from acute cyanide poisoning. This led a grand jury to indict Yazid on charges of aggravated murder. However, there was a big problem. Yazid had already fled to Lebanon, which does not have an extradition treaty with the United States. This made it very hard to bring Yazid to justice because the legal systems of the two countries did not make it easy to transfer fugitives.
He made a new life for himself, literally in Beirut, in Lebanon, which did not have an extradition policy with the United States at the time. He left behind his children. I think he probably knew that the DiPuccio family would step up and care for them as they have. It was bizarre, though, the fact that he thought it out and was able to do what he did so efficiently and so in such a calculated manner.
Yazid carefully planned his escape. He went to Lebanon to start a new life, and a friend helped him make important links, get new IDs, and find a safe place to stay. Back in the US, investigators and the FBI took a long time to put everything together. By the time they realized Yazid had run away, 3 months had already passed. This gave Yazid plenty of time to settle down and disappear into his new life. The authorities couldn't bring him back. All they could do was issue plea deals in the hopes that Yazid would return voluntarily to answer for the murder of his wife, Rosie. But Yazid had other plans. When he got to Lebanon, he changed his name to Maurice Khalif and disappeared. In just 3 months, he also started dating Mila Suki, a 38-year-old school teacher, and drastically changed his appearance. He started wearing glasses and went for a sharp, sophisticated look to avoid being caught. Surprisingly, Yazid didn't try to hide his crime from anyone. He seemed to enjoy his new life, sure that he had gotten away with it. While the FBI and investigators in the US were pleading for his return, Yazid was doing well in Lebanon, enjoying his newfound freedom and the comfort of his carefully constructed new identity.
The playboy life. He is just having a great old time, so much so that the guy that was his patron in Lebanon said, I need you to be quiet. I need you to shut the hell up about being so bold about everything, because he would apparently get, happy in the nightclub and say, they say I'm a killer. Ha ha, I could be a killer.
After starting dating again, Yazid made a new email address called fugitive@hotmail.com and used it a lot. Meanwhile, back in Cleveland, the FBI and local police were carefully watching his every move, waiting for the perfect chance to catch him if he ever left Lebanon. Luckily, that chance came sooner than expected. On October 7th, 2006, Yazid got on a plane to Cyprus, setting off a chain of events that the authorities had been eagerly anticipating for months. The FBI immediately called the Cyprus authorities, warning them that Yazid was likely traveling with a fake passport. In response, the Cyprus authorities agreed to detain him because of this. When Yazid arrived at the Cyprus airport, he looked completely different. Based on a tip from the FBI, the Cyprus police asked for his fingerprints to make sure he was who he said he was, even though he had a fake passport. The fingerprints quickly showed that he was actually Dr. Yazid Issa, giving the police every reason to arrest him. But things weren't as simple as they seemed.
At the time that Dr. Issa was charged with aggravated murder, and although there were not specifications or requests that this be handled as a possible death penalty case, persons could construe that aggravated murder would carry the death sentence. So that was something that we had to navigate through as far as using the United States State Department with the folks in Cyprus to make sure that they understood that we would not be looking for the death sentence, because they would have been reluctant to allow him to return for a trial where capital murder was involved.
Even though Cyprus had an extradition agreement with the U.S., it didn't apply to cases involving the death penalty. Yazid's lawyers fought his extradition for almost 3 years, even though Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Bill Mason said that the death sentence wouldn't be sought. Finally, in January 2009, Yazid was sent back to Cleveland to stand trial for aggravated murder. The next step was to put together a prosecution team that had little more than hints of what they were doing: poisoned pills, a suspect who had left the country, and an email address that pointed to Yazid as a suspect. But proving all of this in court was going to be hard. The trial started on January 9th, 2010, in a courtroom in Cleveland. From the start, Yazid's defense said there was no strong testimony, relying heavily on the claim that the evidence was only suggestive and not direct proof. In spite of this, the prosecutors tried to make a strong case to get Rosie justice. Defense attorney
state's case here is entirely circumstantial in nature. And you will, or said another way, there is no hard evidence, no physical evidence, no scientific evidence whatsoever to connect Yazid Issa.
While Yazid was on trial, his defense team said that someone else had added cyanide to the pills with the intent to kill Rosie, and that Yazid was unaware of what they were doing. The prosecution, on the other hand, called 80 witnesses to counter this claim. Yazid's brother Firas gave the most convincing testimony against him. This evidence was very bad for Yazid's defense because it made him look less trustworthy and suggested he had something to do with Rosie's death.
When did he tell you that he gave the pill to his wife that killed her?
You know, sometime after she passed away, so sometime within those 2 or 3 days. Those days kind of blur together for me because it was a pretty bad period. I mean, we just lost somebody we love.
All right, and when you had that conversation with him about that, did you ask him, well, who possibly could have put cyanide into those pills?
Yes.
All right, and did you ask him if he killed his wife?
Yes. I asked him if he was responsible for her death, and he said yes.
What did he tell you that he did?
He said that he put the cyanide in the capsule.
The defense also brought up the idea that one of Yazid's mistresses, who was upset about his happy marriage, might have poisoned Rosie on her own. However, they were unable to back up this theory with solid proof. On the other hand, the prosecution presented strong evidence linking Yazid to Rosie's murder, pointing out that he had even bragged about it while he was in Lebanon.
So Plan A is high-speed automobile accident. Plan B is random product tampering. Plan C is the girlfriend killed my wife so she could be with me. That's the presentation you're going to get in this case.
The jury came to a decision on March 9th, 2010, after days of strong testimony and heated arguments.
We, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled and sworn, do find the defendant, Yazid Issa, guilty of aggravated murder.
Finally, Yazid was found guilty of aggravated murder and given a sentence of life in jail without the chance of parole for 20 years. Parents of Rosie were so happy and sad at the same time that they hugged each other tightly. Not only had their daughter's killer finally been caught, but they also couldn't help but think about how Rosie had been planning for a third child, but now had to leave her 2 children to grow up without their parents. Before we end the video, we want to send our deepest condolences to Rosemarie Essa and her family. What do you think about this case? Is it true that Yazid killed Rosie just to live with his women? Or is there more to the story than meets the eye? Thanks for joining me today as we explored this gripping true crime case. If you found the story as intriguing as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth investigations. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about the evidence? Were there any details that surprised you? Until next time, stay safe and keep questioning the world around you. See you in the next video.